know it. You tell a story. You tell the whole damn world this is bear territory.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. All right. It's a stunningly beautiful day here in Berkeley. The Cal varsity rugby team won the national title. The football team continues to add all kinds of incredible talent. And as Bud Turner always used to say, it's another great day to be a bear. Welcome to Tell the Whole Damn World, the podcast for Golden Bear fans. If you're like us and are unabashedly and unapologetically all about Cal, you found the right place. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Reza Serafinejad, and as I always like to say, if you're associated with the University of California, you're one of the luckiest people on this planet. Never forget that. It's May 5th, 2025, and in today's episode, we're honored to sit down with the leader of the Cal Athletic Department, Jim Knowlton. In the 7 years Jim has been our athletic director, a lot has happened. In addition to guiding the athletic department through a worldwide pandemic, Jim has had to help navigate NIL, the transfer portal, and conference realignment. To say that those changes have dramatically changed the collegiate athletic landscape would be putting it mildly. We'll learn how he leans on his military background to lead Cal through these particularly turbulent times. We'll also gain insight into how he interprets the passion some Cal fans choose to express online about the direction of the athletic department. And do you know that the only head coach to ever take a school to the Final Four and to the Rose Bowl is a Cal alum? And better yet, that school happens to be Cal? Stay tuned to learn all about him in our weekly Cal History segment with Leslie Mitchell. But before we get to that, I want to quickly thank all of you out there for your help in telling the whole damn world about us. We've noticed a lift in the number of Cal fans who are listening and watching our episodes. But we're not done yet. Our goal is to keep growing this podcast and do our part to make it impossible for the rest of the nation to push Cal to the side and ignore our incredible university and the California Golden Bears. So please keep doing what you can to help spread the word about this podcast. Tell all your Cal friends about it. Share us on your social media. Tell people to go to tellthewholedamnworld.com. You can also follow us on X, better known as Twitter, at Win4Cal. That's Win, the number 4, Cal. Speaking on behalf of all of us here, including Ahmad and Leslie, we sincerely appreciate all of you out there. And now, I promise I'll keep our Cal Sports Report super brief. Congratulations to the Cal varsity rugby team. They defeated Life University 55-38 to claim their 29th 15s national championship. That's just sensational. And that's the 105th team national title in Cal history. At Edwards Track, the Cal men earned their 4th straight big meet win over Stanford. The number 19 Cal women's tennis team advances to the NCAA Super Regionals. The number 2 men's rowing team swept number 6 Stanford, and the Cal softball team swept Syracuse on the road to end the regular season. Finally, if you have the means and want to help take the Cal football program to new heights, there's still time to make a donation to the Fight for California Challenge that will benefit the Cal Football Strategic Opportunity and Excellence Fund. It runs through midnight Pacific on May 7th, and at last check, they're up to nearly $900,000. Okay, up next, we've got Leslie Mitchell with our weekly Cal History segment, and immediately after that, we'll have our interview with Athletic Director Jim Knowlton.
This week in Cal History.
Leslie Mitchell, class of 1981, is a third-generation Cal alum and lifelong Golden Bear fan who writes articles about notable people associated with our university. You can visit her website, calbearshistory.com, or follow her on Twitter under CalBearsHistory, where she posts stories of interesting students, faculty, and alums. Leslie is an incredible resource when it comes to learning more about prominent people associated with our university, who have gone on to do great things in this world. We couldn't be luckier to have her as part of the show. Today, we're going to learn all about Clarence Nibs Price, the only person to ever coach a basketball team to the Final Four and take a football team to the Rose Bowl. We just passed his birthday on April 26th. Welcome again to the show, Leslie.
Well, thank you, Reza, as always, for your kind comments. Yeah, Nibs Price, and I don't know where he got that nickname from. If anyone out there knows, please tell us, because it's such an intriguing nickname. But Nibs Price was a pretty remarkable guy. He was a Cal guy through and through. Went to school at Cal. He was class of 1914, so he started in 1910. Played both baseball and rugby at Cal. Although when you look at his picture, he's this tiny little guy, very slender, very slight, very short. And I'm like, how does this guy play rugby without getting killed? Obviously, he had fortitude.
Well, yeah, he was probably pretty fast on his feet. You probably couldn't catch him maybe once he had the ball, but
yeah, he was too small to grab or something.
Right.
But
yeah.
So he graduated from Cal, and then he went down to his back home. He was originally from San Diego. He went back home to San Diego and started coaching high school football at his alma mater, which was San Diego High School. And then World War I happened, and he joined the U.S. Army Air Corps and served as a pilot in World War I. He got discharged from the service up in the state of Washington, and he was traveling back down to go home to San Diego. And he just stopped off in Berkeley to look around and say hi, as alums do if you're passing through. And he met up with Andy Smith, who was the new coach at Cal. He had never met before. And they got to talking about football and coaching and this and that. And Andy Smith hired him on the spot as an assistant coach. This is 1919. He's back at Cal.
Not a big search committee was pulled together or anything to make that decision, apparently.
No. Andy did it all on his own. He hired Nibs Price to be the coach of the freshman team. In those days, freshmen were not eligible to play varsity football. So they had to spend their freshman season with the freshman team. So he hired Nibs to be the freshman coach, which was a masterstroke and changed everything for Cal football because Nibs Price could recruit. And don't kid yourself, recruiting was just as important in 1919 as it is today. He got guys to come. In fact, a couple of players from his own school who had coached at San Diego High School. One of them was named Brick Muller, who became one of the all-time Cal greats, is in the Cal Football Hall of Fame, took us to the Rose Bowl in 1920, etc. And then a bunch of other guys he recruited from the San Diego area and the Southern California area because he knew everybody. You know, it was a tiny little world, and he knew all these people. And he brought in all those Southern California recruits.
Well, yeah, as I understand it, football was not played by a lot of different high schools in that era because of the risk of injury and even death from how rough of a sport it was back in the day before some of the rule changes that were made. And then he, like you said, was just so gifted as a recruiter. He was primarily responsible for recruiting most of the student athletes who formed the Wonder Team at Cal, right? In 1920.
Those players I was just talking about, he recruited them to his freshman team for the 1919 season.
I see. Uh-huh.
And then the 1920 season, and people may be aware, the 1920 season was the great turning point, the Wonder Team, where the name the Wonder Team comes from, where Cal went 9-0 and blew everybody out and blew out Ohio State in the Rose Bowl and all of that. That was those players. I mean, not entirely. There was some holdovers from the previous season, but the heart of that team were the players that Nibs Price had recruited.
Right. So he was the assistant under Andy Smith for all of those years, for all of those Wonder Teams where we had that undefeated streak that spanned, what was it, 5 seasons or
yes,
5 seasons of undefeated football. And then when Andy Smith unexpectedly and suddenly died of pneumonia, I think he was only 42 when he passed away, right? It was a shock to everyone. He was elevated from the assistant coach to be the head coach. And that, I can only imagine, is no small feat to try to, step into the shoes of Andy Smith.
It's trying to replace a legend like that is always tough. I think of, whoever's going to replace Gino Oriyama at UConn or something like that. You're like, I don't know that I want that job.
Right.
There's no way you're going to achieve what that person achieved.
Right.
But Nibs did pretty darn good. His first season wasn't very good because most of the Wonder Team players had just graduated. So it was a rebuilding year. And, everybody was pretty much in shock over Andy Smith's death. So the first season was a losing season for the first time in years and years.
Yeah, I think since like 1897 or something like that. Right?
The first losing season in American football, because a number of those years Cal didn't play American football. We played rugby. So
got it.
But yeah, we hadn't had I think it was 1897 is correct. That was the last time we'd had a football season that was losing. But the following year he bounced back. We had a winning season. And the year after that, and then in the 28th season, it really took off. And Cal made it to the Rose Bowl, back to the Rose Bowl.
Yep. And that, if memory serves, was that epic battle against Georgia Tech in the Rose Bowl.
Yes. One of Cal's many claims to fame or infamy, depending on how you want to look at it. That was the famous Roy Regal's wrong way run in the Rose Bowl year, where Nibs Price was a defensive guy. His games were always low scoring and tight, and he wasn't much on offense. But the game was really close, and Georgia Tech fumbled, and Roy Regals, who was the center, he picked up the ball and got confused and turned around and ran in the opposite direction. I forget how many yards, something like 60 yards in the wrong direction. With
his quarterback, Benny Lom, chasing after him, yelling at him the whole way, turn around, turn around.
Yep. Lom finally caught up with him and tackled him at the 1 yard line of Cal's own 1 yard line. And by the way, years ago, I was watching the Rose Bowl. This was when I was like a teenager with my dad, who was a Cal guy. And they interviewed Benny Lom and Roy Regals on the Rose Bowl broadcast. And I remember Roy Regals saying, I thought he was yelling at me just to because he was kind of being a jerk. Like, why is he trying to hog my glory or something? Which is why he didn't pay attention to him. Benny Lom said, yeah, well, it would have been nice if he'd listened.
Yeah, they did listen, right? Well, the thing that really surprised me, and I didn't know about this until I'd read your article, but so Cal, after he was tackled at the 1, Cal had first down at their own 1 yard line. Right. And then the thing that just shocked me beyond belief is that you would think maybe you'd do a couple of plays to run the ball and get a few yards.
Get some yards.
Yeah, you just at least try to get out of the shadow of the goalposts. And instead, Coach Nibs Price decided to punt the ball on first down.
From his 1 yard line, he's going to punt. Yes.
Yeah, that's a hard one to
later
reconcile.
That he felt like the team was just shell shocked by the wrong way run, and he was afraid they'd give up a safety. He was afraid they'd just kind of collapse because they were so much in shock, which isn't surprising that they would be. So he thought that was the safest thing to do. Unfortunately, the punt was blocked, went out of the end zone, and it was a safety after all. So Disaster upon disaster.
Oh, well, yeah, I think he might have been a little shell-shocked himself and calling that play.
It sounds like it. That was not Nibs' finest hour. I mean, and unfortunately, the final score of the game was Georgia Tech 8, California 7. So
the thing that I
was the margin of victory.
It was. But, I do really admire and like the fact that Roy Regals, apparently, because that fumble had happened in the first half of the game, was so distraught and sobbing and unable to settle himself there at halftime. And he didn't want to go back out onto the field because he felt that he'd ruined, the University of California and himself and the coach and all of that. And Nibs Price put his hand on his shoulder and said, son, the second half is about to begin. You go back on out there. And I thought that was pretty cool to encourage him to get back out there on the field.
In the second half. And we shut out Georgia Tech in the second half. So.
And Roy Regals, of course, went on to become an All-American player that next season.
Right.
and the captain of the team and all of that. So, that's a coaching moment where if you don't encourage that player, perhaps he, goes into a shell and he's never the same and loses all confidence, and instead became a great leader of the next year's team. And so anyway, I just thought that was.
It is a great story. It's kind of almost inspirational. And Roy Riegels, in later years, every time he heard about some horrible blunder by a high school kid or a college kid playing sports, he would write them a letter and say, listen, I understand. You've probably heard of me. You've probably heard what happened to me. It's not the end of the world. Don't give up, which I really respect that about him. Unfortunately for poor Roy, he spent the rest of his life being called Wrong Way Riegels, which probably, as he said with some of his letters, I don't really enjoy laughing about it, but what can you do?
Right.
So the next season, though, Cal did pretty well, had another successful season, and ended up in a three-way tie for the lead of the Pacific Coast Conference with Stanford and USC. Inexplicably to me, the president of the university, President Campbell, decided to withdraw Cal, because apparently they didn't have like a formula for tie breaking, and somehow they had to fight it out. I don't exactly know how they decided who was going to go to the Rose Bowl. I think the Rose Bowl committee just invited who they wanted, so you could go plead your cause down there. And he just withdrew Cal unilaterally from the competition. He said, well, we lost to Stanford, even though we beat USC in one of the most amazing games you'd ever want to see. And USC is the one that ended up going to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
I gotta go back and talk about that USC game, because that has what may be my all-time favorite. No, it's not my all-time favorite Cal play, because we know what that is. But one of my all-time favorite Cal plays.
Well, and you weren't there, Leslie. So.
No, I was there for the one that we all know is the greatest, but I wasn't there in 1930.
Right.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, so the 1929 game against USC, which was really a high scoring and just a powerhouse of scoring. And Cal was supposed to get slaughtered by them because they were only a defense team. Cal has the ball 4th and 10 on their own 15-yard line.
Yeah, you got to punt the ball. There's no other option, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to punt. No, Nibs Price sends out Benny Lom, who was their best player, their best passer, their best rusher, also their best punter. And he sends him out to punt, and it's a fake punt. 4th and 10 on your own 15. It was a fake punt. And he went right through the line. There was a great block by a guy named Rusty Gill, who was an offensive lineman, and he ran 85 yards for the winning touchdown.
Nice. Yeah, now that.
You got to say, Nibs is like a little bit like Roy Riegels. He didn't get snake bit by making a bad decision in that Rose Bowl. He came right back, and boy, he sure rolled those dice.
Really? I mean, I cannot imagine any coach who would have the gravitas to do something like that. That's pretty, talk about Riverboat Ron. That takes the cake in terms of being really gutsy.
It sure does. But, the following season was another off year for Cal. Everybody graduated, and it was kind of another rebuild year. And at that point, Nibs Price resigned as the head football coach. He'd had a great run. He'd only been head coach for 5 years, but 3 of them were just outstanding years. And, that it's kind of weird that he quit. I'm not quite sure what made him decide to resign, because there's no reason to think he couldn't have rebuilt the team. He's a great recruiter, but he just decided it wasn't for him being the head coach. But he stayed on. This is what's amazing. He stayed on as an assistant coach for the football program all the way until 1954. He spent 35 years as a football coach, assistant and head coach. At the same time, he was also the head basketball coach.
That's amazing. So when he became the head coach at Cal, he was already the head coach of the men's basketball team.
Right.
So he
became head coach of men's basketball in 24 and head coach of football in 26.
And so while he was a head coach in football and as the head coach of the men's basketball team, I understand he won a conference championship in football the same year that he also won a conference championship in basketball.
Right. And I don't know if anyone's ever done. I know nobody at Cal has ever done well. I mean, People don't. Back then, it wasn't that unusual for coaches to double up on sports. Particularly basketball was considered one of the minor sports. It wasn't particularly a big deal at that time. So not like it is now anyway. But still, it's pretty incredible. Well, first, he becomes head coach in 1924 of basketball, and everybody said, he never had any background in basketball. He hadn't played basketball particularly. He didn't really know that much about the sport. And people were like, what are we doing with this guy? They won 3 conference championships in his first 3 seasons. So I guess he was meant to coach basketball.
Yeah, I guess he knew what he was doing. And then the 1927 team went undefeated, and they didn't have a NCAA tournament or anything at that time, but apparently that is considered by some of the polling to be a national championship that Cal can claim in men's basketball.
They do those organizations that do the retrospective, who was really the national champion of this year and that. Similar to how Cal is considered national championship in 1920 in football and 21 and 22.
Right. So Cal could actually claim 2 national championships in men's basketball, 1927 and 1950.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's
and
pretty
he
cool.
won a total of 11 conference championships in basketball. It was always the Pacific Coast Conference back then at that time. And then, of course, in 1946, he took Cal to the Final Four. The NCAA tournament was created in 1939. And, of course, 1941 to 45 was a little dicey because of the war. World War II, a lot of guys were gone. They did have some of the tournament in some of those years, but it's a little bit questionable just because most of the athletes were in the service. But in 1946, right after the war, Cal again, I think they went 30-5 that year, and they ended up in the Final Four.
Yeah, that's pretty special. So that was the first of the 3 Final Fours that we'd made, which is pretty impressive. And then, just going back to the football coaching, I mean, to think that he was an assistant under Andy Smith, then the head coach, and then was an assistant and continued to be an assistant all the way through Pappy Waldorf, right? And so I think I read in your article that he was either the head coach or an assistant coach on 7 of Cal's 8 Rose Bowl appearances. As pretty incredible.
An assistant for 2 of them under Andy Smith, the head coach for 1 for himself, and an assistant under Stub Allison in 1938, and an assistant under Pappy Waldorf in his 3 consecutive Rose Bowls.
Right.
So that's quite a trivia thing.
I'll say that's amazing. And then the other thing I think that was notable, or that I was at least surprised to hear, was that after his 30-year run as being the head coach of the men's basketball team, he amassed 449 career victories, which, as you can imagine, over a 30-year period is just the most wins by any Cal basketball coach. But beyond that, he also was the primary person who was in support of hiring Pete Newell to succeed him as the head basketball coach.
And that was quite a gift to Cal basketball.
Yes, I'll say.
A nice parting gift.
Right.
And Pete Newell.
Right. Yeah. And Pete Newell, prior to that, was the head coach at the University of San Francisco.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, he stayed a loyal Cal guy. He consulted with the football and basketball coaches for the rest of his life. He passed away in Berkeley in the 1960s.
I mean, I got to say, they don't have very many monuments or statues to people, these great figures from the past. But, I mean, this guy certainly checks off all the boxes when you think about how he started at Cal in 1910 as a student athlete playing baseball and rugby, and then all the time spent as a coach and just devoting his entire life to Cal. I mean, they should do something for this guy, I got to say.
If only he hadn't punted on first down in the Rose Bowl.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Leslie. I think that was really awesome to learn all about Clarence Nibs Price, although we will be looking to you for a follow-up on this if you ever do figure out why exactly his nickname is Nibs.
If you didn't hear enough today about Nibs Price, I do have an article about him that I've just republished on my website, calbearshistory.com. So you can read even more about the fabulous Nibs Price.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much, Leslie. And I guess we'll see you next week.
All right. Go Bears.
Go Bears. Leslie has a real way of describing events from long ago as if she were there herself. It begs the question, is it possible she's a time traveler? Our main event is coming right up. Ahmad Anderson, the Cal Hall of Famer who created Bear Territory, will join me in a minute, and together we will spend some time with Athletic Director Jim Knowlton. I can't imagine any Cal fan out there who hasn't heard of our next guest. Jim Knowlton has been the athletic director at Cal since May 2018. As the top dog in the athletic department, he oversees an athletic program that sponsors 30 different sports and supports more than 850 student athletes. Jim came to Cal after serving as the athletic director at Air Force for 3 years. Prior to that, he spent 7 years overseeing the athletic department at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, where he was named the NACDA Athletic Director of the Year. He's a graduate of West Point, earned a master's degree in civil engineering from Cornell, and served a distinguished career in the U.S. Army, rising to commander. While in the Army, he earned his Jump Wings badge, awarded to soldiers who are trained military parachutists. So you know that if the man has the nerve to jump out of an aircraft, there probably aren't too many things in life that shake him. And as the leader of our athletic department, that quality has been tested over and over again as we navigate some very choppy waters. We couldn't be more grateful and honored to have him with us today as our featured guest. Welcome to the show, Jim. We appreciate you making the time.
Reza, Ahmad, thank you so much. Tell the whole damn world, this is Bear Territory.
All day, Jim.
I am pumped and ready to have some fun today. Yeah, this is good.
Well, I'm gonna jump right into it. I'm wearing this Giants jersey. You know, we had Cal night with the Giants just a week or so ago. A couple of days ago, this past Friday, and I'm not wearing it for the baseball. I'm wearing it out of pride for the blue and gold. I'm wearing it to support you and represent the things that you're doing, Jim, and that as things seem to fall by the wayside for many universities as we go through what we're going through, I know that you stand tall and you're a giant for the University of California at Berkeley. So go Bears, Jim. And, you know, I'm biased because you're my guy and I like you and I appreciate you. So I just want to be very clear about that. But I'm going to jump right into it. Several weeks ago, Peter Wright told us that in his interview that being an athletic director or coach is probably one of the most tumultuous times right now. NIL, transfer portal, fundraising, all the above. You know, what would you like to say to the Cal fan and the Cal family out there in Bear Territory about what's up for us in these challenging times and how we've dealt with it in a very positive way?
Well, it's a great question. And first, for both of you, I'm just grateful to be here. And really, the stories that you're telling, you know, I spent an hour watching Stephanie and Ron Rivera, and, you know, and I've watched a few of the other ones and really enjoyed it. There's some great content. So we're grateful for you helping us tell the story. And yeah, there's a lot going on. I mean, it really is a challenging time. And when people talk about the enterprise of intercollegiate athletics, you know, you named them. You know, it's conference realignment. It's the transfer portal. It's money in the system now. There's a lot. And I think for us in Cal Athletics, we're really trying to let our values lead. We're really trying to make sure that we stay true to what Cal stands for and truly what we believe in, that student athlete, that academic and that athletic balance, while also winning games. We got to win games, right? If you're going to be in the Power Four, you got to win games. You got to win football games and basketball games, and you got to win in those Olympic sports because that's what we're known for. And so, you know, being able to sort of keep your eye on the North Star, you know, and I use our strategic plan, which is the first strategic plan in the history of Cal athletics, as our guiding star. It has seven goals, and they really are the guiding star for us. And part of those are you got to do well in the competitive sports. You got to be competitive. You got to win championships. But we also want to graduate our kids. And people probably get tired of hearing me say it, but I was a former faculty member, a professional engineer by trade, and I want our kids to be able to graduate. I want them to come to this number one school in the world and get a degree at the end of the day. And I think, now that we're at the 93% graduation success rate, which higher than we've ever had, I feel like we're doing it the right way while still winning championships. And again, I know we want to win more, and that is what we're working on hard. But I think by staying true to who we are, we're navigating these challenging times. And I couldn't be more proud of both our university, our department, and our student athletes.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Well, you're kind of leading right into the big question that I think a lot of Cal fans want to know. And what would you say to people out there who say that Cal can't compete with the big boys when it comes to football and men's basketball in particular?
Yeah, I would say just look at last year, right, for football. It was a season where you say, boy, with a bounce here and a bounce there, we're at 10 wins.
That's
We
right.
are not that far off. We really are not that far off. And yeah, does it take commitment? Does it take our generous donors? Does it take the campus investing? I mean, it doesn't happen without the entire village supporting. If you have any part of that that's not in alignment, it's really hard to win at the very highest level. And part of the challenge is all the teams we schedule want to win too. And I haven't been able to find any teams that don't want to win, or we'd be bringing them in, every weekend. But it's really takes this alignment, and it's not easy to get. It's like being on a great team. Ahmad, I've heard you talking about that at different points in time. We've all been on that team where everyone loved each other. Everyone pulled for each other. You knew that they had your back. You knew that you had their back. And that's really what we're trying to do here at Cal. And I really think that we can do it. We've got the right coaches. I think we've built our offensive staff now on the football program. We've got Ron Rivera. I really feel like we are putting the pieces in place that can allow us to compete at the highest level. There's still lots of challenges, and we have worked so hard over many years to continue to minimize those blockades that have just existed. And I think we've moved to a place where we're in a really good spot, and we're supporting our student athletes with revenue share should this House settlement be approved. And the collective has done a great job with helping with retaining and acquiring and recruiting student athletes. And so, yeah, I'm really excited. It's possible. It can be done, but we got to be in alignment. We all got to be working together.
So, yeah, I mean, one of the biggest challenges that I think is at the forefront of everyone's mind is just how perilously close we came to being without a major Power Four conference. Can you take us through the backstory of how everything came together for us to join the ACC along with Stanford and SMU?
Well, it's going to be a book, right? I'll probably write a book someday when I retire, because when I think back and I go through all my notes, it was hairy. It was a really challenging time. And I think part of the challenge was we could see it coming as soon as we heard about USC and UCLA. I mean, that was really, when that happened, they made that announcement. That was the first real tremor. And then because it took so long to get a final decision, the window of our media rights deal, it was a really good window to be going to the market. And because we were waiting and waiting and waiting for the regents to decide on whether UCLA would be able to go or not, the window began to close, and some of those media rights companies were doing layoffs, and by no fault of anybody except the landscape changed. All of a sudden, the deals that we were getting were not as good once they actually came to the table. And, as we started to see that these were not going to be the deals we had hoped for, you could feel it. Everybody's starting to try to figure out what would be next. And, Chancellor Chris was wonderful, and she was committed, and she had talked to every one of those chancellors and presidents, and they committed to her that they were staying in the Pac-12 and were going to sign that morning. And then when Washington and Oregon signed with the Big Ten 10 minutes before all of the presidents agreed to sign on with the Pac-12 for a long-term deal, then it was pandemonium. And we reached out to a couple conferences. I really felt like there were only two conferences that really fit us well, and that was the Big Ten and the ACC. And I think both of them wanted us, but under different terms. And so, we worked hard with commissioners. I could not be more grateful for the leadership of Jim Phillips, who was fantastic. Obviously, the leadership of Carol Chris during these times. And we had a lot of Cal alums that stepped up to help as I reached out to them and said, hey, you're in a special sector of this business. Give me a little help. I'd like to pick your brain about stuff. And we have a lot of alums in really key places that were very helpful. And then at the end of the day, going to the ACC was a great fit. And I had gone to our student athletes and said, tell me what you want in our next conference. And the SAC came together and said, Mr. Knowlton, we want to still be able to compete at the highest level. That means win national championships and gold medals. We still want to have this incredible student athlete experience that we've had in the Pac-12. You guys have taken great care of us. We want to still have that in this new conference. And the third thing is we want to compete against schools like us that value academics and athletics. And so those were the three guiding principles that drove us to the ACC. And we've got 1 year under our belt. It's been fabulous. We've won our first championship already with men's swim and dive. We won a regular season championship with women's gymnastics. And right now, as I look at our teams, we're having some great success, both the ones that are in the ACC and the others. This weekend we'll be playing for a national championship in rugby. And when I look at it to see both of our tennis teams are, preparing for the NCAAs, our women's golf team, our women's water polo team, our beach volleyball team, our men's golf team, I'm very confident is going to get picked for the NCAA tournament as well. I mean, that's amazing. All of our spring sports are having some great success. And, our softball team, I just watched them win this weekend and they're going to be in the tournament as well. So I really feel good. It's helped set us up. Now we've learned a lot. We are learning a lot. We do an after action review after everything. And right now we're doing that on our first year in the ACC. And, we brought in sleep experts and nutrition experts, but once you go through it once, all of a sudden the coach is like, okay, I stubbed my toe a few times. I'm going to change this. I'm going to bring more of that. I'm going to leave some of that. And I think we're going to just continue to get better as the years go on in the ACC.
Well, look, I got to tell you, I think that in your role, the type of leadership you have is one, some would say situational because it was constantly pivoting. But I call it guts leadership. That's grinding every day. That's the unity that you had to bring together, as you've just described. That's teamwork. And that's bringing everybody from not only the student athletes, but the staff and the faculty as well, and the greater Berkeley Bear Territory community. And that grinding, unity, teamwork leads to success. And I call that guts. And you've had that kind of guts, and that's what you brought together now, bringing together Ron, having Justin on board, and then having that guy that I went to school with, and not only Ron Rivera, who I went to school with, but also our Chancellor Lyons, the same class I was in. And one of the things I've noticed about you since I first met you, that you talked about strategic plan. Tell me how, and I'm an HR guy, so I kind of know the insight on this, but tell me how your military experience, Jim, has been able to guide you and navigate you on not only putting that strategic plan, but looking towards the left, looking toward the right, looking around you, and knowing that those folks around you are doing the job they're supposed to do as you move forward as a leader of this athletic department.
It's funny. I feel like the military part of my experience truly prepared me for Cal. And, you'll laugh and go, okay, wait a minute. That doesn't seem like it's a really good fit. Doesn't mesh right. But but, I was the captain of the hockey team. And then, I went to Airborne and Ranger School, and I consider myself a student of leadership. And Ranger School was probably one of the best leadership training grounds, 9 weeks of just grassroots leadership. And, I went there in the best shape of my life at about 165, maybe 70 pounds, with 150 others that were just absolutely in great shape. And I graduated 129 pounds 9 weeks later, and my mom didn't recognize me. Said she was calling her congressman because of how I looked. But it was all about, how do you lead during challenging times? How do you lead when you haven't eaten, or you haven't slept, or you haven't had, some of your basics needs taken care of? And I feel like we've seen that adversity, that constant adversity over these last 7 years with pandemics and, the many challenges of conference realignment. And, I think when you go through a lot of those things, and I led a platoon of 30 in Europe, and a company of 225 in Berlin when the wall fell. And so I feel like at each step of my career, I saw adversity and challenges, and saw how people react during those situations, and what kind of leadership is needed to help navigate challenges. And I don't have all the answers. I learn every single day, and there's not a day I don't come home and say, wow, I can handle that better. I can still think about a better way to do that. And but I do think it's by having a vision as a leader, and this strategic plan is part of our vision, and knowing where you'd like your department to go, or your team to go, or your student athletes, their growth, what you'd like it to be like, has really helped us continue an upward trajectory. And, I think about my first week on the job, when Brian Cameron came in and said, hey, I've been talking to ADs for a while about improving the student athlete experience, and no one's taken me up on it. And I went home to my wife and said, man, this guy's a great guy, and he has no idea how competitive I am. And, 6 months later, we presented a plan that only cost $12.5 million, and he wrote the check. And now we have the best student athlete development program in the country in the Cameron Institute. And so those are the kind of things to support our student athletes, so that we can have success on the field and off the field. And, and certainly my military experience certainly gave me some of those tools, I think, to help us on that journey.
I want to say, and I should have led with this, thank you for your service. Appreciate you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Well, you just kind of touched on this, and the importance of fundraising in your position as the leader of the athletic department. And Chancellor Lyons teased that we may have a few additional sports that may soon become fully endowed. What can you tell us about that, and about fundraising for the department overall?
So about 2 years ago, we sat down as a leadership team, and with several of our really generous donors, and said, we have to find a way to put more money into football, right? We've got to be able to bring more money for football. And as we banged around ideas, one of the ideas was, if we could endow our men's sports, and our women's sports could be supported by the university until we could endow them, and then football and basketball could sort of be tubs on their own bottom. The money that they generate, they could spend, right? Right now, they support a lot of our department, but if we could take some of those expenses, those annual expenses, off the department's plate through endowments, then it would give me more money to support football. And, over the 7 years I've been here, we've taken the annual budget for football from roughly 20 to 32 million. And that's been during a time of austerity, and it has not been easy. And, and I haven't been able to say yes every time I'd like to say yes about whatever it is, but we're not having our coaches pilfered by Stanford and UCLA and USC like they were when I got here. And so we really said, let's see if we can endow some of the sports. And you probably saw we got a $23 million gift to endow men's and women's golf. And then we have moved forward. We have another commitment to endow 3 other sports, and another sport, and none of these, I can't announce them yet. I'm just itching to announce them. And another sport just kind of got over the hump to be fully endowed through their fundraising efforts. And we have 2 or 3 more sports that we're working on that are making great progress this year. And so that was one of the ways was let's endow. And once those are fully endowed, those 5 sports, it saves me about $5 million a year, right? So think about that. That's then it allows me to invest more in football and basketball and our other sports, but primarily those two. From a from an overall fundraising, I mean, I'm just excited. The generosity of our Cal alums it blows your mind. It really does. And when I got here the year before I arrived, we raised 25 million. The last 3 years we raised right around 40, and this year we're on track to raise about $80 million. So that doesn't happen without alignment and our alums just so generous in supporting our student athletes and our programs. And so I'm grateful. I can't do my job without their support. I mean, it just is magnificent in the way that this community comes together.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty dang impressive. I mean, wow, 80 million on track for that. And I guess it can't hurt to have General Manager Ron Rivera now part of the staff and working alongside you. And can you tell us a little bit about how you see your working relationship working alongside him?
Well, Ron Rivera is a gift. He's an icon. He's a legend. I got to know Ron pretty early in my tenure, despite the fact that he was busy on Sundays, most weekends in the fall. But we have a big event we host at Tahoe, and he has a house near there. So I've stood in his kitchen for an hour plus talking leadership with him and Jack Clark. And so, those are great moments to get a feel for how someone thinks and, the secret sauce of leadership. And so, he's been a fabulous contributor in his time and his treasure to the university, to the athletic department. And he and Stephanie both are treasures for this university. So, yeah, I'm excited for Ron. He's already helping our football coach. He's there banging ideas off Justin and vice versa. He's talking to our assistants. He's talking to our young men who are trying to chart their path to the NFL, or they're trying to chart their path to, what's life after ball. And I think he can be so invaluable, as he will with bringing donors together, bringing alums together. He's got that magnetism that just brings people together. And, we saw it at the Giants game. We sold out 5,000 tickets, had to go back for more because the Cal family bought all the tickets the Giants gave us. And we did a panel with Ron and I and the chancellor. And it was just so well attended. So many great folks there that, are just magnificent supporters. So I think he's going to help us in many ways.
Look, one of the things I think about is my relationship, Ron, and knowing what kind of guy he is, a guy I played alongside with, and then looking at you all sitting on the stage the other day at the Giants game, you, the chancellor, and Ron. I'm confident we are on the right track and where we're supposed to be and where we're supposed to go. But I also look at you, and there's not many folks that are a little bit shorter than I am in my having played football. And I listened to you talk about the weight you lost. I played at 175 pounds. But what I admire about you a lot is that you are a captain of the Army Black Knights. And I can only imagine watching you check somebody while you're out there. And I said to the coach when they were on here, because they had an outstanding year, I said, I will come do bear territory on the ice in ice skates if I get a jersey. I just want a jersey because the jerseys are beautiful. Have you been able to get to a game or two?
So I have seen our club ice hockey team. I was there between period speaker for a motivational speech one game. And Ahmad, I walked out with 2 jerseys.
Come on!
So I wear one of them when I play hockey on the weekends down in Oakland Ice, which I haven't done in about a year now because, when football starts and all these things happen, your weekends sort of flow away. But yeah, no, the jerseys are amazing. And I've put it to good use. Yeah, they got a great team. They got a great coach. And I think they were undefeated all the way to the playoffs this year, which is just magnificent.
That's right.
Yeah, we're so proud of them and what they do. And I get beat up all the time. You know, you were a hockey player. Make this program a varsity sport. And I'm like, well, all I'd have to do is get about a $200 million gift to build a hockey rink. And I have to have a men's and a women's hockey team. So yeah, I need a basketball practice facility first, right? So I'm trying to set the priorities.
Well, look, I'll get out there and do Bear Territory, raise some money. My mom was from Boston, so I knew hockey, and I came back to California after a couple of winters, and they were like, "What is that? What is that jersey, Bobby? Who?" I'm like, "You don't even know. That's a real sport. That's a real sport."
I grew up in Boston too, so Bobby Orr was the man, right? Every one of us wanted to play like Bobby Orr.
Absolutely, baby. Absolutely.
That was funny. That is great.
Well, now you've been at Cal now for 7 years. And I guess, in that time, what would you say makes Cal such a special place?
Yeah, that is just such an easy question because of all the things and, the education, just walking around the campus, all of those things are amazing. Getting up to the university club, but I'm telling you, the people are first class, and I get to meet alums, I get to meet student athletes, I get to meet faculty, and on Fridays they have these faculty presentations, and I listened to Miss Dudna 2 weeks ago talk about stuff that 90% went over my head, but because she just got the Nobel laureate, I said, I can't pass this up. Even if I get 10%, I'm going to be so much smarter walking out of this thing.
That's right.
And it's just amazing. The people that you get to meet, the people and how passionate they are about, just about what we do. And, some people say, well, those are the same people that are beating you up on this or Twitter or whatever. And I'm like, but they wouldn't if they weren't passionate, right? If they didn't care, if they didn't love this place, if they weren't invested, I got pretty thick skin. I've been around it long enough to know that I can spot passion when I see it, and I just really am thankful for the people that make up this Cal community.
Absolutely. Well, look, we're coming close to the end, but we ask you this next question, like we've asked everybody else who's been on this show. It's special to me because it's real for me. It's about what is your favorite Bear Territory moment? Because many of them have a lot, and there's a lot to be had at Cal, like you mentioned. But what is your Bear Territory moment? When did it hit you? Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was lucky because I've had a lot of them, but my first Bear Territory moment was when we beat Stanford at Stanford. And I'll never forget standing on the field as the masses just poured onto the field. And I looked around and it was all blue and gold. There was not a red shirt to be seen anywhere. We're on the road. I mean, we're at Stanford's place. And I'm saying, how is this possible? And so then the icing on the cake, and maybe this was the cherry on top of the icing on the cake, is I see Bernard Muir, who's the AD of Stanford. And I go over and, we're close friends, and I shake his hand and I said, Bernard, this is amazing. You're going to get fined $20,000 for Cal fans storming your field. And he looked at me, and in 30 seconds, he was on the phone with Larry Scott saying, those are Knowlton's folks. Those are not Stanford. Those are Bears out there. And I just thought, man, the tears I saw that day, just how meaningful that is to so many people. That was my first and most memorable. And like I said, there's been a lot since, but that really stuck with me as just a very powerful Bear Territory moment.
Well, that was when Chase ran it into the end zone, right? And that dramatic last play of the game, that was pretty incredible. That harkens back to my time as a student back in 93 when we hadn't beaten Stanford since 86. And when we beat Stanford on the farm at their place, you saw this swarm of students just pour out onto the field. And I still remember this so clearly to this day, that the security went all around the goalpost that was closest to the Cal student section. And they said, no, you are not going to tear down this goalpost. But then all of a sudden, one of the Cal fans said, well, hey, look at that goalpost on the other side of the field. It was unprotected. And you just saw this blue and gold mass like an amoeba coming straight down the field, jumping on the goalpost, tearing it down. And all the Stanford fans were just, whoever was left, was just kind of standing there going, oh no, look what they're doing to our field.
That's an AD nightmare, just so you know, when you see that goalpost go down.
Right. Yeah. But it also goes to show just how passionate the Cal community is. Yep. And, it certainly seems like you are certainly tapped into all of that, and you understand. I mean, it's so challenging, I would say, with the way that the landscape of college football, especially, and just all of collegiate athletics is just shifting and changing day to day. So, we are all about Cal and the Golden Bears, but quite honestly, I don't know if I necessarily envy you and the job that you've got to handle, because it's a lot of stuff. But I can tell you that we deeply appreciate you here making the time today, Jim.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, and go Bears.
Go Bears. Thanks, guys. Grateful.
Go Bears. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you.
Thank you again to Jim for making the time. When we started this podcast after the big game in November, we dreamt of having someone like Jim on the show, and it's incredible to see that we're getting attention and growing this podcast. And hey, with $80 million on track to come in through donations and support for the Cal Athletic Department, there's no question the man knows how to fundraise. Before we go, if you want to read something truly inspirational, I want to encourage you to buy Robert Paler's book, Paralyzed Powerful. It comes out May 6th. And in case you missed it, I highly recommend you watch or listen to last week's episode where Robert was our featured guest. He shared how important the Cal community has been in his journey to overcome quadriplegia. And the California Alumni Association is hosting a very special event on Tuesday, May 13th, called We All Want to Change the World, an evening with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's a special fireside chat with the NBA legend and Professor Emeritus of Sociology, Dr. Harry Edwards. Tickets can be purchased through the CAA website, and the ticket price includes a copy of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's book, We All Want to Change the World, My Journey Through Social Justice Movements from the 1960s to Today. That's going to do it for this week's episode. We're still trying to sort out our featured guest for next week, but the great news is that we have a few options to choose from. Now that the word is out, more and more people want to come on the show. And the challenge is more about coordinating the release of our interviews in a timely manner when they make the most sense. Thank you so much for tuning in. We sincerely appreciate all of you out there listening and watching. See you next week. This podcast is about celebrating all things Cal and the prominent people who are passionate about the University of California. Do you feel Cal is the center of the universe? Do you bleed blue and gold? We want you to tell the whole damn world about it. Go Bears!